images.
Tracey was a beautiful woman. Her personality really kicked it, 5 notches.
She's always smiling, but the laugh is the thing, the sound that came when she really let out one of her big laughs. It was great.
When she became a flight attendant, it was a pivotal turning point in her life.
My wife called me and said that Tracey had been missing.
She's a flight attendant. She can be anywhere.
It's terrifying.
The chill overcame me. I just knew something was really wrong.
Yes, I'm a neighbor to this apartment, and they sound like they're really fighting over in the next apartment.
The call that came in was just a disturbance call about 7:30 in the morning. Said there was a loud argument going on in the apartment next to them.
And she's really screaming now.
Is she calling for help or just yelling?
Well, I can't really understand.
Okay, thank you. What's going on?
A neighbor calls 911 to report a disturbance. What more is he to do? When he doesn't hear from Chicago PD, the man in apartment 705 heads off to work.
Police arrived, rang the bells, nobody answered. Police couldn't hear anything from their ground location.
With no one to let them in and no signs or sounds of trouble, the police move on. But what exactly is going on in apartment 706? 34-year-old flight attendant Tracey Todd lives here. She's not here now.
Family members had reached out to try and find Tracey, and she was not responding.
Where else could this young woman be? Everyone's first thought is Tracey's working on a flight.
I also was a flight attendant. And so, sometime our schedules would change. That was normal. For us, it wasn't anything unusual. I said, she's okay.
After 7 days without any word from Tracey, her family is worried. This is looking less and less like a work trip. Her mom takes matters into her own hands.
Tracey's mom had gone to her building looking for her and actually got inside the apartment.
Tracey?
The mother saw that Tracey's uniform was still there, so she had a feeling that she was not out on assignment.
This sure doesn't look good. An attractive young woman living on her own has disappeared without a trace.
Tracey's mom came across the next-door neighbor, and he told her that he had heard this argument coming from Tracey's apartment on the morning of September 14th. That he had made a 911 call. police didn't respond to his apartment, so he left for work. He told Tracy's mom he heard Tracy crying in her apartment and heard a male voice speaking in a soft tone.
This is terrifying news for a mom already worried sick about her daughter.
My mom called me and she said that Tracy was missing. And when she said that, a chill overcame me. I just knew something was really wrong.
Fearing the worst, Tracy's sister Lisa starts calling around, desperate for any news. But all she finds out is that no one, not friends, not family, not even Tracy's boyfriend Kevin, have heard from her since she spoke to her mom 7 days ago. What about the male voice the neighbor heard in her apartment? No one has any idea who that could be, or even what Tracy was up to the night before that fight. Lisa's next call is to Tracy's coworkers, and they have some troubling news.
A couple of the flight attendants went online and they checked to see if she had punched in. And we found out that she didn't make her actual schedule job. Then that's when we just panicked.
I became alarmed immediately. Tracy just did not disappear, especially when she was supposed to fly. She just wouldn't do that.
The vibrant young woman's disappearance gnaws at the hearts of all who love her.
We were really, really close. We did a lot of things together. We would shop, we loved going out to eat. We've traveled together. We saw each other a lot.
She's always smiling, but to hear that laugh, you would understand it's robust. It's still ladylike, but robust, you know. Her friends called a giggle. That's her.
There's no question who's the apple of whose eye.
But she was a daddy's baby. We spent many, many, many hours together. When she was young, Tracy had skin problems and asthma. She still managed to smile through it all. I watched her blossom into a butterfly, as they say, and it was just a joy, you know, and a proud father to sit there and see a beautiful daughter emerge.
Happy, successful, daddy's little girl. Right now, there's no way to explain her disappearance, but no one's ready to consider the darker options.
We all rallied together and called the police. The police met us at the apartment.
Sergeant Anthony Baio of the Chicago PD has investigated his share of missing women, and he doesn't like what he sees in Tracy's apartment one bit.
When I arrived at the scene, there did not appear to be any forced entry. Didn't appear to be an act of a burglary. Her purse was there with her credit cards and her work IDs. Her cell phone was still there.
Most troubling for them, I think, was the fact that she had left her luggage on her bed.
Flight attendants don't put their suitcases on the bed because suitcases are dirty.
Also troubling was the fact that her asthma medication was found in her room.
Tracy never goes anywhere without her inhaler. But what really has her family worried is not what's still in the apartment, it's what's not.
There was a throw rug that Tracy kept in her living room that was gone.
That was kind of strange. The gut feeling came back again.
It's obvious to everyone, Tracy hasn't run off on her own. Something's happened to her, and whoever's behind it has a 7-day head start.
Part of the initial investigation is we checked the local hospitals to make sure they weren't a victim of an accident of some sort. Upon getting negative results from the hospital search, this missing person's turned into a high-risk missing.
Tracy's life may be in danger, and her family and friends feel completely helpless.
As time goes on, you get more and more anxious, trying to find out where she was and who she's with, or is she okay? Everybody was just running around like chickens with their heads cut off, trying to find a needle in a haystack.
Chicago, a vibrant cosmopolitan city whose art, culture, and architecture attract tourists and newcomers from around the world.
Chicago is the third largest city in the United States. I've been here for 22 years now. It's a great city.
There's lots of good places to see. Navy Pier, at the lakefront, Magnificent Mile, some really nice neighborhoods.
The trendy South Loop, with its galleries, bistros, and late-night jazz joints, is the perfect home for a young jet-setter like Tracey Todd. Tracey's father is also a familiar face in these parts. He owns a number of parking lots in downtown Chicago.
One of my parking facilities was not too far from her. She would come down, sit with me, and we go to lunch. Maybe once a week. Walking down the street with her, guys whistling and saying, "What you doing with that old man?" You know. It was some fun times.
For Ernest, these precious moments are quickly becoming a distant memory. His beloved daughter Tracey has been missing for more than a week, and friends and family long for word she's safe and sound.
You know, your child is missing, and the feeling that you have, you can't explain.
Everything was a possibility. You try to prepare for the worst, but you pray for the best.
Chicago PD are stumped. No one simply vanishes into thin air.
Investigators run out every potential chain of evidence, every potential issue. Did she have disputes with people? Did she have any issues at work? Did she have any problems in her personal life with drugs or alcohol or anything else that could have put her in harm's way?
The police spoke with everyone. I know they spoke with me. And the thing that they were trying to find out was, did she have a problem with anybody? Was she into it with anybody? It was just crazy because nobody could really say, you know.
Tracey's young and attractive, and in her line of work, she meets a lot of men. Is it possible she's the target of an unwanted advance at the airport? Or did a secret liaison go horribly wrong?
She and I discussed it. You know, you're living alone now. If you go out with somebody that's new, let somebody know where you are. You know, get his license number.
It's not likely Tracey has a new man in her life. In fact, family gossip says she and her boyfriend, Kevin Williams, have been shopping for a ring. Tracey believes she's found the man of her dreams.
They were just the greatest couple. Kevin Williams was sort of in the prime of his life. He's an attractive guy. He's very outgoing. He had lots of friends. In addition to being a real estate developer, he also had a side job where he was a security guard at the Oprah Winfrey shows. So he kind of had this little extra something about him that attracted people to him.
Her friends dubbed him Mr. Wonderful because of how he treated her.
Whining and dining, showing her all sorts of affection. Most of her time home, she was with him.
The family did call him Mr. Wonderful and had him over for holiday dinners and loved him.
when I first met him, you know, a typical father. I mean, I was really looking him over, as the young people say, checking him out. They were happy, and, you know, she was happy. So I said, okay. Lisa said that he treated her well. So I guess he was Mr. Wonderful.
Unfortunately, Kevin is as in the dark as everyone else.
Honestly, no.
He has no idea where Tracy could be and hasn't spoken with her since the day before she disappeared. He's of no help to police.
Tracy was still missing. It was turning into an abduction and or kidnapping.
That makes this a federal crime. So Chicago PD brings in the FBI and their sophisticated tools. Maybe the FBI's evidence recovery team can find an overlooked clue in Tracy's apartment. At first, they find nothing new.
It looked fine. There was no foul play in the apartment. Nothing was turned over. Nothing was broken. It just looked like she had to take off all of a sudden.
But as we all know, first looks can be deceiving.
Once we turned off the lights and we started using our alternate light sources, we could see where somebody was using a cleaner to clean something up.
Whoever cleaned up did a very thorough job. Maybe too good, because strangely, there are no fingerprints on anything.
You would think that Tracy's fingerprints would be all over the kitchen, all over the bathroom, all over the bedroom. The investigators found a vacuum cleaner, but the bag was missing. So it appeared to them that someone had gone to great measures to wipe that apartment clean of fingerprints or any evidence that something had happened.
Someone didn't want to leave any traces behind. But traces of what? What exactly is being covered up here? A chilling discovery helps answer that.
There was a stain on the floor, a dark color stain by her front door where you come in to tested positive for blood. We photographed it, and then we took off the carpet, and it bled through to underneath the carpet. It also went through to the carpet padding and eventually to the concrete slab. And there was a footwear impression in blood on the concrete slab. It appeared somebody may have set something down there and blood leaked out, and then they ended up stepping in it.
The million-dollar question, is this Tracy's blood? The cleaning solutions, the shoe impression, and blood samples. Everything is sent back to the FBI lab for processing.
We didn't have any blood spatter on the furniture, on the walls, the ceiling, so it didn't appear that anyone was shot or stabbed in there.
What exactly happened here? One blood spot and a missing woman are difficult to explain. And if she was somehow kidnapped, how would he smuggle her out of the busy building?
It was a high-rise. They had a freight elevator. He could have got some sort of cart or something like that. The area rug was missing. He could have rolled her up in that carpet like he was moving it and taking it somewhere, and nobody would know that she was in there.
If the FBI theory is right, it doesn't look good for Tracy Todd. Right now, there's no way her family is going to accept that grisly scenario. Unless there's proof otherwise, they have to believe Tracy's coming home.
Deep in my heart, wanted her to still be alive. I was an ex-Marine, so personally, I just could not show emotion. You gotta stay strong for a family, because you can see what her sister and her mother and the whole family is going through.
It was pretty intense. You can cut the air with a knife.
Tracy's loved ones aren't willing to just sit around waiting for the police to crack this case.
The family got very involved. We left no stone unturned.
I'm ranting and raving about finding where my daughter is.
It's been more than 2 weeks since vivacious flight attendant Tracy Todd was last heard from. Has she been kidnapped? Or worse? Right now, no one knows. Then it's confirmed. The suspicious blood found in Tracy's apartment is hers. But that doesn't stop her family from believing she's still alive.
After she didn't surface and nobody knew where she was, it's just hard to explain if you haven't experienced this, but it's just something that you feel. I think you can feel their soul, and I think they cry out to you and lead you to finding what happened to them.
We put up a reward. Everybody had hopes she was still alive, and this way we could get the word out. I'm using every resource that I could come up with, even going back to some of the guys in the hood that I knew from years back. You know, hey man, you know, where's my daughter, you know?
Tracy's family held a candlelight vigil at her condominium complex. There's a park right across the street.
And I was just amazed at the amount of people who came to lend their support. These were the kind of things that gave you hope and kept you strong.
Someone, somewhere, must know something. But until that someone starts talking, police are stuck in first gear.
When the information stops coming in, it does get frustrating because now you hit the brick wall.
Everything changes with a gruesome discovery on a late autumn morning.
A gentleman was walking his dog through Bobian Woods Forest Preserve, and the dog came out of the woods carrying a skull.
It's a human skull, and in the fall of 2000, it could belong to any number of missing persons in Chicago.
The first look at the skull makes it clear it's been damaged purposefully, and somebody's taken steps to actually blowtorch some of the teeth out of the skull in an attempt to hide who the person's identity is.
The monster who did this went to almost unspeakable lengths to hide the identity of this victim. But there's something he missed. Surgical screws deep inside the jaw, and each one has a microscopic serial number.
She had jaw surgery at some point. You can look at that serial number right away, figure out who this person is.
After 72 agonizing days, the search for Tracy Todd is over. The dental work confirms this is her skull. Tracy's no longer missing. She's been murdered.
I was at one of my parking facilities, and I got the call. They had found the remains, you know, and I was numb. You knew then the truth, the reality of death was there. Then she was no longer coming back. What hits you then is all the things that you planned. Christmas, the birthdays, this is not going to happen anymore. I'm not going to see her walk through that door and come up, hey, Pops, and big old kiss. That's gone. It was just a hard experience for me then.
As Tracy's family tries to process the grim news, the FBI searches for the rest of her remains.
We did a line search just to see what we could find with our own eyes walking in a long line, flagging anything that looked like potential evidence.
It doesn't take very long.
Investigators find 3 different shallow grave areas.
We were finding human bone. We were also finding remnants of garbage bags that were torn open. It appeared that animals were tearing into it.
With each new discovery, the horror intensifies.
The animals removed the flesh, from the bone. She was completely skeletonized.
It literally was just bones. There was no tissue, there were no organs, no hands, no feet. The head had been separated from the torso. The torso had been separated from the pelvis. The arms had been separated from the torso as well. So this body was actually dismembered with cutting instruments.
I saw it on the news. The first thing I thought was, this is not happening. This is really not happening, you know? But it was.
We were best friends, very close. My little baby sister.
The case really ramped up. We just had to determine how she was murdered at that point.
Investigators soon learned there's no easy answer. This is one meticulous, heartless killer.
Some intense heat was applied to the dental area of Tracy's skull. There were burns, and in fact, some of the lower teeth had been burned away. Somebody tried to remove the organs from inside the body, get rid of DNA that could link that body to Tracy Todd. So when it came to the hands and feet missing, one theory was that if there was still tissue on the hands, there were still fingerprints, and that would be a way to identify the body. So those were disposed of someplace else.
The dismembered bones hold no clues about how Tracy is killed. Investigators don't know where to turn until a lucky break.
Tracy's friends and family were cleaning out her apartment. One of the friends was in Tracy's closet and going through a shoebox, and inside a shoe was a receipt.
It's a receipt with quite a story to tell.
That receipt was for a restaurant that night before her disappearance.
Apart from a phone call to her mother, no one knows anything about what Tracy did on the night before she disappeared. Her dinner out could finally unlock the mystery.
The police went to where the receipt was issued and talked to a server there.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've seen them together, yeah.
And she verified that Kevin Williams and Tracy Todd had been there eating dinner and having drinks. She identified both of them in photographs.
Really? She was with boyfriend Kevin Williams that night?
She remembered the incident very well. She remembered buying them a round of drinks because they were such good customers that evening.
That's funny. Williams didn't mention this when he first talked to police months ago. Maybe Mr. Wonderful isn't so wonderful after all. The discovery of Tracy Todd's remains in the woods on Chicago's South Side triggers a full-scale homicide investigation. The spotlight swings to her suave boyfriend, Kevin Williams. When police learn the couple dined together the night before Tracy disappeared.
He was flashy. He'd have expensive cars, the boat, expensive watches, going to high-end nightclubs. The detectives found out they had a fight the previous week.
No one knows what the fight was about, but suddenly everyone's talking about Kevin's odd behavior after Tracy went missing.
You do have a lot of unusual steps that you would expect him to take that he didn't take, including calling her family, putting up posters himself. He just basically withdraws.
Hey, sorry to hear that. I mean, I haven't seen it.
All of a sudden, when she's missing, it's almost like he didn't care.
Everyone has their own way of dealing with grief. Perhaps this is Kevin's. Or maybe he's got something to hide.
If I hear from her, I'll let you know.
Police zero in on him, and they don't dig very deep before striking gold.
His Range Rover received a parking ticket at 11:50 a.m. the following morning, right outside of Tracy's apartment.
It's time for police to have another word with Mr. Wonderful.
Me and Tracy, okay? We're having a good time.
To their surprise, He freely admits being with Tracy at the restaurant and getting the ticket the next morning. As to her murder, he says he's innocent, and he's got an explanation.
Kevin Williams' version is that he did, in fact, go out with Tracy Todd. They had a date where they went to a nice dinner.
After he and Tracy had dinner, they went to another location. And according to Kevin, two of his friends met them for drinks.
Williams continues, telling police, as the night wears on, things start to get out of hand with his two pals, bus driver Ivan Duncan and handyman Jamie Ford.
He tells them that these two guys were involved in the drug trade and they were discussing a kilo of cocaine.
Tracy was feeling tired, offered to take her home. I said, sure, man. I said, get her home safe.
Ford drove Tracy home in Kevin Williams' car. Kevin became too drunk, so Duncan winds up driving Williams to Williams' grandfather's house, he says.
What else do you want to know, man?
In Kevin Williams' mind, Ford killed her.
Okay, but why? Williams' story takes a bizarre twist.
Kevin talked to Ivan Duncan later, and Ivan Duncan told him that Jamie was sexually assaulting Tracy and had to kill her because she was resisting. That was Kevin's story. He ultimately blamed the crime on Ivan and Jamie.
As far as stories go, this one's not bad. It explains Tracy's murder and why Kevin's SUV was outside her apartment the next morning. It also gets him off the hook. But is it true?
Tracy Todd's a very beautiful woman, and you can imagine somebody like Ford thinks he has her in a drunken state after a night out. You know, maybe he took a chance and it didn't go well.
Maybe. Maybe not. Police find Ford in, of all places, the hospital, severely burned. He not only says Williams is lying about meeting him and Ivan Duncan at the jazz club, he claims Williams is the reason he's in this condition.
The detectives asked him what happened, and he talked about Kevin Williams paid him to burn down one of Kevin Williams' garages.
It goes down a few days after Tracy disappears, and Williams tells Jamie it's an insurance scam.
Kevin drives Jamie to this garage, and Jamie immediately notices two things. There's an awful smell in that garage of some sort of cleaning solution. And the garage is pristine. It had been cleaned thoroughly.
So had Tracy's apartment. Is there a connection here? If the garage fire is an insurance scam, why does Williams scour it clean first?
Jamie goes to grab a roll of toilet paper. As soon as he lights a lighter to start this garage on fire, the garage explodes. The roof comes off. The door gets blown out while it's burning. It hits Jamie and knocks him to the ground backwards.
Jamie caught on fire. And that's how he ended up in the hospital.
Now the investigators have two conflicting stories. Who can they believe? It's almost unthinkable that Williams brought Tracy's body to this garage. And even more so, to imagine what he may have done here.
This garage site, you could basically, you know, for lack of a better term, have like a macabre workspace where he would, you know, take the body apart. You can't just, you know, do that on the open, or somebody might stumble on you.
Mr. Gordon? David?
Tracy's friend, David Gordon, rents a house from Williams beside the garage. He believes police should know what his son saw that day.
That was a pretty big garage, but we didn't have access to it. My son was running back and forth, and they kept telling him, you know, go back to the front. Kevin had those big garbage cans They were spraying and pouring things all over the garage.
Alarm bells are ringing for police as they descend on the burned-out garage. If Williams did bring Tracy here, there may be traces of her DNA left behind. But there's nothing left at the garage, and no DNA to be found on anything. What about Williams' house?
The residence was searched, and we were looking obviously for, shoes that may have left that bloody shoe print in her apartment. So we collected all his shoes. We searched his vehicles and a cabin cruiser boat.
Every place they looked to find a connection to Kevin Williams, they came up with nothing.
Williams may have questionable business practices, but that doesn't make him a murderer. Is the final piece of the puzzle held by the other man Williams says he and Tracy met that night? Ivan Duncan?
Ivan Duncan was working as a bus driver here in Chicago.
Kevin Williams has told us that you're involved in Tracy Todd's disappearance. When you say I'm involved, what do you mean?
When police inform Duncan his friend says he's involved in Tracy's murder, he starts singing like a canary.
Elaborate on this phone call. Hello.
Yo, man. I need your help, man.
Whoa. What's up, Kev?
He received a desperate phone call from Kevin Williams on the morning of September 14th, where Kevin was telling Ivan, "I need help."
Come see me right now, man.
I dozed off at Tracy's place. She found my planner. She found my wedding ring. She found that I was married.
Married? Tracy's soon-to-be fiancé is married? Is that what they were seen arguing about? Is this a motive for Williams to murder her?
He was a married man having an affair. He tells Duncan that Tracy confronts him over this double life. Duncan asks, well, where is Tracy? And he says, well, she's gone. And Duncan says, well, what do you mean? To tell your wife on you? And Kevin Williams says, no, she's gone.
This case isn't getting any easier. Investigators now have 3 very different stories to figure out. Kevin's, Jamie's, and now Ivan's. One of them likely killed Tracy Todd. But which one? There are conflicting stories about who killed 34-year-old Tracy Todd. Her boyfriend, Kevin Williams, says his friends Ivan Duncan and Jamie Ford are responsible. But their stories check out. Especially the one Duncan tells about a strange phone call he receives from Williams on the morning of Tracy's disappearance. Chicago PD have enough to arrest Williams for murder. They just have to prove he did it.
There really wasn't any forensic evidence pointing to Kevin Williams.
Investigators turn to the phone records of everyone involved. And oh, what a tale they tell.
There were a lot of interesting things that we discovered when we created this timeline of the phone records over the course of a few days.
This timeline of phone calls is key to the case the prosecution lays out at Kevin Williams' trial. The calls start the day before Tracy disappears.
On September 13th, there's a series of phone calls, literally one a minute, from Tracy's cell phone to Kevin's cell phone. And they're very short calls, not answered.
Tracy's just heard a rumor from a friend. The man she's dreaming of spending her life with is already married. She's hurt and furious and needs to hear what Kevin has to say. She barrages him with 90 calls in 7 hours until he finally picks up. Williams denies it all, and they agree to meet for dinner to clear the air. But Tracy's radar tells her she's being lied to.
At some point, Kevin had nodded off in that apartment. And And that's when Tracy was doing a little background work on this marriage.
Kevin can't lie his way out of this one.
Tracy wakes up Kevin, confronts him with the fact that she now knows that he's married. I found your ring. I bet your wife doesn't know about this. I'm going to tell her. Kevin probably starts to get a little bit confrontational and says, you're not going to be able to prove anything. She's not going to believe you. And Tracy probably says, you don't think so? Find that receipt for dinner tonight, because that's my proof.
Tracy's already hidden tonight's restaurant receipt as evidence they were out together. But she badly miscalculates how Williams will react to her threat to blow the whistle on their relationship.
You've got this blood in the apartment. You've got the violent argument that the next-door neighbor hears.
Tracy, stop, all right? Calm down. Calm down, Tracy. I said calm down.
A forensic expert testifies some very small bones in her throat area were broken, typically indicative of strangulation.
In court, Williams' wife testifies that her husband couldn't be the killer, but instead of helping him, her explanation seals his fate.
His wife testified that Kevin, although he wasn't home with me, he was at his grandfather's house. I know that because I called him there. The phone records show something a little bit different. A woman who cannot find her husband. There are calls to the studio where Kevin works, Kevin's cell phone, then a call to Kevin's grandfather's house. Now, if Kevin was there, that would have been the end of the phone calls. Within a minute or so, there's another call from Kevin's house, his wife, calling his cell phone again.
It's glaringly obvious she has no idea where her husband is. William spends the next few days covering his tracks. At the same time, his wife is making more than 180 calls looking for him.
Investigators believe that Kevin Williams was able to move Tracy Todd's body from her apartment to this garage.
The garage fire was no insurance scam. It was a way to cover up his gruesome handiwork.
Tracy's body was dismembered in that garage. And the garage fire was designed to destroy any leftover evidence.
Williams spends days and nights concealing his heinous crime. But 3 shallow graves ensure Tracy's remains are eventually found. A restaurant receipt hidden to prove Williams is a 2-timing cheat ends up exposing him as a killer. Finally, phone calls made and not made clinch it.
I think from the moment that he killed her, that there was a higher power that says, you're not going to get away with this.
It's the end of the line for Mr. Wonderful. Kevin Williams is found guilty of first-degree murder and concealment of a homicide. He's sentenced to 65 years in prison.
I thought when it was a guilty verdict that I would jump up and down, you know, I'd just be cheering like I was at a game, but after I got off of the phone, I sat down and thought about it, and all I could do was cry. Sorry.
There are certain cases in your career that kind of stick with you. This was one when you see photos of Tracy Todd in life and all the promise she had and what her life was about and her family and friends, to go from that, you know, to a photo of her dirty skull in a forest preserve is, you know, it was tremendously awful.
If you're still angry and thinking bad thoughts, you're losing the battle. you're losing the battle because the murderer is controlling you and your family. So channel that anger into something positive, and you will find yourself a lot more at peace with the world.
The end of the trial is an emotional watershed for another reason. It means her family and friends can finally have her funeral. 3 years after her death, her remains are returned, giving her loved ones a chance to say goodbye.
I want this to be a celebration of life, and I want you to leave here with love in your hearts. People came from everywhere. It was just a very moving tribute to her. I mean, you just didn't realize all these people knew your little daughter. You saw the big picture. That's my picture of her, my last picture of Tracy. And I got it. It sits where I can see it. You know, we sit down, she and I talk. She was a beautiful girl.